While two wars wage on the other side of the world, you get up on a Monday in Chicago, and our major concern is it's kind of sloppy and gray. So count your blessings, everybody. Yeah. Congressman Rodney Davis in just a second. Overnight last night, our time, a U.S. destroyer shot down drones. We believe these were Houthi attacks from Yemen as the attacks at the Red Sea shipping channels. China is accusing our Navy of violating its sovereignty. And there is concern as this spreads that we are going to be involved on a larger basis soon. Certainly hope that's not the case. Rodney Davis, former congressman, joins us now. Of course, I am pushing Rodney Davis to run again, and I'd like you to run immediately, even though there's no election right now.
Well, not a chance. But I always enjoy being on with you.
You're not closing the door to running again, are you?
Me? I had some of my best supporters tell me when I did that, please say never. Say never, but it's about never.
Is that right? See, I did not know this.
Yeah.
This is breaking news, Tom. Mark the tape. We don't have tape. All right, so let's talk about George Santos. George Santos is voted out on Friday. I know you're not laser focused on this stuff, but fair or unfair?
Fair. I mean, it's unfortunate. Here's what's going to happen, though. I mean, this is a guy who I could have told you was just a bit off. Remember, he almost beat a sitting member of Congress named Tom Suozzi in the 2020 election cycle. So my job was running the orientation program for freshmen when I was there. Mm-hmm. And George Santos got to come to orientation at least for a few days until his race was declared the winner for Mr. Suozzi. So I met him in 2020 before he ran again in 2022. And I thought there was something off then. And as a matter of fact, he wins in 22. I'm sitting down with a group of us and some reporters. And one reporter asked me, she said, who do you think will be the first special election? Which means who's the first to get in trouble? And I said, right early on, it'll be George Santos. This is a guy who lied about every aspect of his life. He tried to tell everyone that he's some wealthy, rich guy who's living the lifestyle in New York City and abroad. Well, here's the irony, and it's already happening because HBO Max already bought the rights to his story.
Yeah, they're working on a movie right now.
He's going to go to jail because of all of the things that he did. I mean, he even took credit card donations from his fellow candidates and fellow members of Congress and then ran up more expenses on those cards. One member of Congress in particular had his card and his mother's card fraudulently charged by George Santos in his campaign.
How about that?
This is a crook.
It's nuts.
But he's going to end up living the lifestyle that he said he was because of all of these liberal media outlets. When he gets out of jail, he's going to go on a redemption tour, and he's going to be as rich as he says he was, and that is the saddest part of society right now.
It's the weirdest sentence that maybe has ever come out of my mouth. I hope reality TV as a genre has the decency, that's the part people are laughing at, to not employ this guy. But I tend to believe what you said. It's former Congressman Rodney Davis. Jane.
First of all, Rodney Rusty in 773 said, we love Rodney. Hope he runs for U.S. Senate or governor someday. So you needed to hear that. Also, back to the George Santos thing. I mean, obviously, you saw this early on. There had to have been other people that saw that something was off with him. He lasted quite a while. It's not a surprise he's gone. What would have happened that day since it was sort of a quick decision?
I didn't understand your question there. What was your question again?
Well, the question is the day in Congress when he was expelled. Obviously, we saw him changing the locks.
Okay.
Yeah, that particular day, everybody shows up. He's in the room. How quick does it go? What is the voting process like? We could watch it. We watched a little bit, the highlights on TV. But as somebody who's been there, everybody's anticipating this day. They know it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like most votes. They're pretty. They're pretty similar. You just walk down to the floor, you put your card in, you walk away. Most people on the floor are not talking about what's actually going on the House floor. They're talking about many other things and some conversations you don't want to hear. But I will tell you, when it comes to Santos, that got a lot of attention, so everybody knew what they were going to do when they got there. I'm sure their lines were flooded with calls pro keep George Santos or get rid of him. But this one is interesting because it's the first time it's happened in a very long time, and he had to stand there and defend himself. That is something that I think a lot of folks later on, as they leave Congress, they're going to be able to say, I was there when, and this will be one of those moments.
So, Congressman, this brings me to one of my sticking points about life. There's a notion that if you are in Congress, there are separate standards that apply to you as opposed to those that apply to other people. And Jamie Raskin is a Democrat from Maryland who I think has done a lot of good things. But Jamie Raskin stood up in the first vote to get rid of George Santos and said, no, this sets a terrible precedent. Why shouldn't Congress be subject to the same HR rules as the rest of the world? Because if we leave it up to just those of you who are elected to decide who's in, who's out, there's been no pattern to believe you will enforce fairness.
Well, most people leave before they get to that point. Remember, there were many people, even during my 10 years in Congress, that were indicted. They were on the way to being convicted. And they were guilted out by resigning. Those conversations took place with the leaders of their respective parties, and they did the right thing. George Santos did not, and that's why George Santos was expelled. I mean, at some point, you got to look at this as an individual situation where a guy who basically lied about every aspect of his entire life and committed crimes when it came to running for this office. I just find it hard to believe that anybody stands up for a guy when you have all that evidence in front of you, when every other time, every other instance, they want to take away anything Congress has, anything those who are following the law have. I just don't get anybody looking at this guy as and having a pity party for him.
Yeah, and the excuse that was used initially, and eventually when we got to this last round, it was most folks that said, yeah, get rid of him.
Right.
But the excuse was, well, the voters decide. Well, the voters of his own district said, get rid of him over and over and over again. And I don't have the system, Congressman, but there needs to be a system where we can restore belief in our government and in Congress, so we don't see those numbers that, Congress has the approval rating of navel lint. We got to have people believe in the process. And one of the ways to do that is to be holding people accountable for what they've done. I think this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think so, too. And remember, I used to love seeing those polls when I was in Congress. I'd always introduced myself as a member of Congress who, in recent polling, has been found less popular than cockroaches and STDs.
Yeah, it depends on the STD. That's the way I look at life.
You're splitting hairs there now, Cochran.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
In the end, I have the utmost respect for the place of Congress because the overwhelming majority of people there, Republicans and Democrats, are there to represent their constituents. And I certainly hope the George Santos saga is a lesson that national media needs to pay attention to local media, because local media covered the fantastic rise in income increase of George Santos from when he ran in 20 to 22, but nobody nationally picked it up. And that happens time and time again. You have campaigns where members of Congress had pedophiles, actually convicted pedophiles, driving their vehicle and going to events with children. Never gets picked up by the national media, or it ends after one quick story. These are the types of things the national media has to pay attention to.
Well said. Well said. And the story that we'll continue on is how much is George Santos going to keep opening his mouth and yapping about people, their personal lives, conversations he may have overheard, rumors he heard in Congress, because that ugliness is well underway. Rodney Davis.
Let's remember one thing real quick on that.
Yeah, he lies about everything.
You're up against the break. Exactly. This is a guy who lied about his entire life.
Yeah.
And now someone's going to believe him because he says something about another member of Congress?
They're not.
BS.
Right.
Rodney Davis, in case you missed the start of the interview, announced here in breaking news he's running for president of the universe.
Yeah.
So, congratulations. Thank you, Rodney. We appreciate it.
See ya.
There you go.